Dog found a wounded enemy and alerted his owner. What happened next changed everything. The acrid stench of plasma discharge and burning metal hung heavy in the air as Captain Liam Madison surveyed the aftermath of the battle. His boots crunched over crystalline debris that had once been part of the beautiful alien architecture of New Eden Colony. The setting sun cast long shadows across the devastated landscape, turning everything into a haunting tableau of destruction. "What a damn waste," he muttered, adjusting the plasma rifle slung across his back. His German shepherd, Duke, padded silently beside him, nose twitching as they made their way through the wreckage. The dog had been an invaluable companion during his 5 years of service in the Terran Defense Force, and now more than ever, Liam was grateful for his presence in this desolate place. The battle had been brutal but brief, a surgical strike against the cerulean forces who had taken control of this section of the colony. Just 3 months ago, they had been allies, working together to establish this mining outpost on the mineral-rich planet. Now they were enemies, thanks to greed and politics Liam couldn't even begin to understand. Duke suddenly stopped, ears perking forward. Before Liam could react, the dog darted away, weaving through the twisted metal and shattered crystal. "Duke, get back here!" Liam called out, but the shepherd ignored him, disappearing behind a collapsed wall. Cursing under his breath, Liam followed, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. Duke was well-trained. If something had caught his attention, it warranted investigation. He rounded the corner and froze. Duke stood over a figure half buried in debris, gently licking a delicate blue-skinned hand. A cerulean. "Back, Duke," Liam ordered, drawing his weapon. But the dog merely wagged his tail and continued his gentle ministrations to the unconscious alien. Liam approached cautiously, his tactical training warring with his curiosity. The cerulean was female, her metallic battlesuit torn and stained with silvery blood. Long, bright blue hair spilled around her like water, and even unconscious, there was something striking about her features. "Well, shit," Liam muttered, holstering his weapon. Duke looked up at him with those knowing brown eyes, and Liam couldn't help but smile. Yeah, I get it. You're a better judge of character than I am." He knelt beside the cerulean, checking her vital signs. She was alive but badly injured. As he examined her more closely, his eyes widened in recognition. The insignia on her collar. This wasn't just any cerulean soldier. "You're General Therok's daughter," he breathed. "Lieutenant Atria Therox." Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of her name, revealing irises the color of Earth's oceans. She tried to speak but coughed instead, silvery blood staining her lips. "If my dog trusts you, maybe I can trust you too," Liam said softly, making a decision that would change everything. "Let's get you somewhere safe." He gathered her carefully in his arms, surprised by how light she felt despite her height. Duke led the way back to their ship, tail wagging as if he knew he'd done something important. As Liam carried her through the ruins, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this choice, was bigger than just saving one life. Something was shifting, like the first pebble in an avalanche. He just hoped he wouldn't regret it. The soft hum of medical equipment filled the cramped medbay of Liam's scout ship as he finished applying the last regenerative patch to Atria's wounds. Her silvery blood had already stopped flowing, and the advanced Terran medical technology was working its magic, knitting her damaged tissue back together. Duke lay vigilantly by the door, his ears perking up at every small movement from their unexpected guest. Liam had just turned to check the medical readouts when a blur of motion caught his eye. Before he could react, he found himself pinned against the wall, a slender but surprisingly strong blue hand at his throat. Impressive reaction time for someone who was unconscious, he managed, meeting Atria's fierce gaze. Her ocean blue eyes blazed with a mixture of fear and determination. "Where am I?" she demanded, her melodic voice carrying an edge of steel. "Why did you bring me here?" Duke growled low but didn't move, sensing his master wasn't in real danger. "Smart dog." "You're aboard my ship, the Starweaver," Liam replied calmly, despite the pressure on his throat. "And I brought you here because you were bleeding out in the ruins. Would you have preferred I left you there?" Atria's grip loosened slightly, confusion flickering across her features. "You're helping me? Why? I'm your enemy." "Are you?" Liam raised an eyebrow. Because from where I'm standing, you're just someone who needed help. Duke seemed to think you were worth saving. And he's never been wrong about people before. Her eyes darted to the German shepherd, who had stopped growling and now sat watching them with what Liam swore was an amused expression. Slowly, she released her hold on his throat, taking a step back. "Your companion animal. He found me?" "Yeah, and wouldn't leave your side. Must have seen something in you worth trusting." Liam rubbed his neck, noting how she maintained a fighter's stance despite her injuries. "I'm Captain Liam Madison, by the way, though I guess you probably already knew that from my uniform." "Lieutenant Atria Therox," she replied automatically, then winced, as if regretting giving away her identity. "I know who you are," Liam said softly. "Your father's quite famous among our ranks. General Therox, the Cerulean, who helped establish the first joint human-Cerulean colony. Before all this started anyway." Atria's face hardened at the mention of her father. "You know nothing about my father or why we fight?" "Then enlighten me," Liam gestured to a nearby chair. "Because from where I stand, this whole war seems like a cosmic-scale pissing contest over mining rights." "It's more complicated than that," she snapped, but sat down anyway, her movements betraying the pain she was trying to hide. "The minerals aren't just resources to us. They're sacred. Part of our biological necessity." Liam leaned against the medical console, genuinely intrigued. "I've never heard that before. Our briefings just said they were valuable for industrial purposes." "Of course they didn't tell you." Atria laughed bitterly. "Why would they? Humans see everything in terms of profit and loss. You couldn't possibly understand." "Try me," Liam interrupted. "I'm not as simple as you think, Lieutenant." Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Liam found himself noticing details he'd missed before. The subtle iridescence of her skin, the way her hair seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, the proud set of her jaw that spoke of both strength and vulnerability. Atreya must have sensed something too, because her defensive posture softened slightly. "The crystal, they're part of our reproductive cycle," she said finally. "Without them, our population will begin to decline within a generation. We tried to explain this to your leadership, but they dismissed it as religious superstition." "Shit," Liam ran a hand through his hair. "That changes things. Why didn't your father make this more widely known?" "Politics," Atreya spat the word like a curse. "The hardliners in both our governments wanted this war. They..." She suddenly doubled over, clutching her side. Liam was at her side in an instant, medical scanner in hand. "Your wounds are still healing. You need rest." "I don't need your help," she protested, but allowed him to steady her. Her skin was cool to the touch, like silk-covered marble. "Maybe not," he agreed, helping her back to the medical bed. "But you've got it anyway." As she lay back, their faces were inches apart. Liam could see flecks of silver in her eyes, like starlight on water. For a moment, neither of them moved. Duke chose that moment to pad over and rest his head on Atreya's lap, breaking the tension. She smiled despite herself, running her fingers through his fur. "He really is an excellent judge of character," she murmured. "Best partner I've ever had," Liam agreed, stepping back. "Get some rest, Lieutenant. We can figure out what to do next after you've healed." "And if I tried to escape?" she asked, but there was less hostility in her voice now. "The ship's locked down, but I won't stop you if that's what you really want." He shrugged. "Though I think we both know there's a bigger picture here that needs addressing." Atria studied him for a long moment. Perhaps you're right, Captain Madison." "Liam," he corrected. "If we're going to figure this out together, we might as well use first names." "Liam," she tested the name, and he tried to ignore how pleasant it sounded in her accent. "You're either the most naive human I've ever met or the most dangerous." He grinned. "Why not both?" That earned him a small smile in return, and Liam felt something shift between them, the first crack in the wall of mistrust that separated their peoples. As he turned to leave the med bay, Duke settled in beside Atria's bed like a faithful guardian. Looking back, Liam saw her close her eyes, one hand still resting in the dog's fur. The proximity alert jolted Liam awake in his pilot's chair. Red warning lights pulsed across the Starweaver's control panel as the ship's AI announced multiple Terran vessels approaching, patrol pattern detected. "Well, shit," Liam muttered, fingers flying across the holographic displays. He'd chosen this secluded valley specifically to avoid detection, but apparently his luck had run out. The scanner showed 3 Raptor-class patrol ships moving in a standard search grid. They hadn't spotted him yet. But it was only a matter of time. The medbay door slid open, and Atreya emerged with Duke at her side. The regenerative treatment had worked wonders. She moved with her natural grace again, though she'd traded her damaged battlesuit for a spare flight suit Liam had offered. The dark material hugged her figure in a way that made it difficult for him to maintain his professional demeanor. "Your people?" she asked, leaning over his shoulder to study the tactical display. Her proximity sent a shiver down his spine, her natural scent reminding him of ocean breeze and ozone. "Yeah, standard patrol sweep." He glanced up at her. "They're probably looking for survivors, or prisoners, or deserters." There was a knowing edge to her voice. "That's what I am to you now, isn't it, Liam? A complication that could end your career. Or worse." "You're not a complication," he said firmly, then amended. "Well, okay, you are, but not in the way you think." A ghost of a smile played across her lips. "Oh? And what way would that be?" Before he could respond, the AI interrupted. "Incoming transmission from patrol leader. Authentication protocols detected." Liam swore under his breath. "They'll be expecting a response. If I don't answer, they'll know something's wrong," Atreya finished. She straightened, her expression hardening. "You should turn me in." "What? No! It's the logical choice. You've done your duty by providing medical aid to a wounded combatant. Now you can complete that duty by... By what?" Liam stood, facing her. "Handing you over to be interrogated? Imprisoned? Used as a bargaining chip against your father? That's not happening." Her ocean blue eyes searched his face. "Why? Why risk everything for an enemy?" "Because you're not my enemy." He stepped closer, close enough to see the subtle patterns in her iridescent skin. "You're someone who wants this war to end as much as I do. Someone who sees how pointless it all is. Someone who..." The ship shuddered as a scanning beam washed over its hull. "Patrol vessel, Huntress requesting identification and status." A crisp voice came through the communication. "Respond immediately." Liam held Atreya's gaze for a moment longer, then turned to the console. "This is Captain Madison aboard Scout Ship Starweaver. Authentication code Sierra 9 Delta 30. "Captain Madison?" The voice sharpened with recognition. "We've been searching for you since the battle. What's your status?" Liam's mind raced. "Damage during the engagement. Had to set down for repairs. Communications were affected." "Understood. We'll escort you back to base. Prepare for docking procedures." "Negative," Liam replied, perhaps too quickly. "I mean, repairs are still in progress. Give me 12 hours to complete them, and I'll rendezvous at base." A pause. "Captain, our scans indicate your ship is fully operational." "Shit," Liam muttered, then louder. "Listen, Commander, I can explain. Security breach detected." The patrol leader's voice turned cold. "Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." Liam felt a cool hand on his arm. Atreya stood beside him, her expression resolute. "Let me speak to them." "Are you crazy?" "They'll, trust me," she said softly, and something in her voice made him nod. Atreya leaned toward the comm. "This is Lieutenant Atreya Therox of the Cerulean Defense Force. I am aboard this vessel voluntarily and claim diplomatic immunity under Section 7 of the pre-war accords." Silence filled the channel. Liam stared at her. "The pre-war accords?" "Those were suspended when the fighting started." "Actually, they weren't." Atreya's eyes glinted. "They were never officially nullified by either side. A technicality my father insisted upon, just in case." The patrol leader's voice returned, uncertain now. "Lieutenant Therox, we'll need to verify your identity and status." "Of course," she replied smoothly. "You'll find my genetic signature matches my father's records. I trust that will be sufficient." Another long pause. Liam held his breath, watching the patrol ships on the tactical display. They maintained their position, but hadn't powered up weapons. "Identity confirmed," the commander finally responded. "However, Captain Madison will need to explain his actions to command." "Naturally," Atreya said. "We'll both be happy to explain everything to Admiral Neeson directly. I believe she'll be very interested in what we have to say about the true nature of this conflict." Liam raised an eyebrow at her. Admiral Neeson was the highest-ranking officer in this sector, and, if rumors were true, one of the few voices of moderation in the Terran High Command. "Stand by," the commander said. Several tense minutes passed before he returned. Orders from Admiral Neeson. You're to proceed directly to Central Command. We'll escort you. Any deviation from course will be considered hostile action. Understood, Liam replied. Setting course now. As the patrol ships moved into escort formation, he turned to Atria. That was either brilliant or completely insane. Perhaps both, she suggested, and this time her smile was genuine. I learned from watching you, after all. Duke barked in what sounded suspiciously like agreement, making them both laugh despite the tension. You know, Liam said as he plotted their course, this could still end very badly for both of us. Atria's hand found his shoulder, her touch sending warmth through him despite her naturally cool skin. Or it could end this war. Besides, her voice took on a playful tone that made his pulse quicken. I find I rather enjoy defying expectations with you, Captain Madison. Is that so, Lieutenant Therox? He glanced up at her, noting how the ship's lights caught the silver highlights in her hair. Indeed, you humans have a fascinating way of turning impossible situations into opportunities. It's quite attractive. Before Liam could respond to that loaded statement, the AI announced, course laid in, awaiting execution. Right, Liam cleared his throat, very aware of Atreya's continued proximity. Let's go face the music. As the Star Weaver accelerated into formation with its escorts, Duke settled between their chairs, his tail wagging contentedly. Whatever happened next, Liam realized things had already changed irrevocably. For him, for Atreya, and possibly for both their peoples. And somehow he was perfectly fine with that. The first sign that something was wrong came as they approached Central Command. The massive space station's defensive grid was fully activated, its shield generators humming with enough power to repel a small fleet. Emergency beacons pulsed along its hull, and dozens of ships darted around it in frantic patterns. That's not normal, Liam muttered, watching a squadron of heavy cruisers form up near the station's main hangar. Atreya leaned forward, her expression tense. Those energy signatures, Liam, those are cerulean warships approaching from the outer system. Before he could respond, their comm system crackled to life. All vessels, this is Central Command. We are under imminent threat of attack. Battle stations? Repeat. Battle stations. The patrol ships escorting them suddenly accelerated, breaking formation to join the defensive screen. The Star Weaver's AI chirped urgent warnings as multiple targeting systems locked onto them. Captain Madison, a new voice cut through the chaos. Older, female, authoritative. This is Admiral Neeson. Your timing is either miraculous or suspicious. Care to explain why you're bringing General Therox's daughter to my doorstep, just as her father launches an offensive? Liam glanced at Atreya, who looked as shocked as he felt. Admiral, I swear we had no knowledge of this attack. Lieutenant Therox has been with me since the battle at New Eden Colony. It's true, Atreya added quickly. This isn't my father's style. Something's wrong. A tense pause followed. Dock at Base 7, Neeson finally ordered. And pray you're both telling the truth. The Star Weaver threaded through the chaos, Duke whining softly as the artificial gravity compensated for their evasive maneuvers. As they approached the designated bay, Liam felt Atreya's hand slip into his. I believe you, he said softly, answering her unspoken question. This isn't a trick. I know it, she replied, her voice equally quiet. That's what worries me. The docking procedure was barely complete when armed security teams surrounded their ship. Liam raised his hands as they boarded, noting how Duke positioned himself protectively between them and Atreya. Stand down, boy, he commanded softly. The German shepherd complied but maintained a vigilant watch. They were escorted, firmly but not roughly, through corridors filled with rushing personnel and blaring alerts. Liam couldn't help noticing how Atreya drew stares from the human crew members they passed. Some were hostile, others curious, but more than a few seemed appreciative of her exotic beauty. He felt an unexpected surge of possessiveness, which he quickly tried to suppress. Admiral Neeson's war room was a hive of activity. Holographic displays showed the approaching cerulean fleet, while officers called out updates and damage reports. The Admiral herself stood at the central tactical table, her silver hair pulled back severely, her weathered face illuminated by the emergency lights. A report, she barked as they entered. The cerulean fleet has increased speed, an officer responded. Energy signatures suggest they're charging weapons, but something's off about their formation. It's all wrong, Atreya said suddenly. Every head in the room turned toward her. Those aren't standard cerulean attack patterns. And those energy signatures, they're too intense, too unstable. Neeson's eyes narrowed. Explain. Our ships are designed to work in harmony with the crystal energies we harvest. These readings suggest the ships are being pushed beyond safe limits. No cerulean commander would risk that. It could trigger a cascade reaction through the entire fleet. Unless they're not actually cerulean commanders, Liam suggested, the pieces clicking into place. Admiral, what if this is a false flag operation? By whom? Neeson demanded, but her tone suggested she was already considering the possibility. Someone who benefits from this war continuing, Atreya said, stepping closer to the tactical display. Someone who... The station shuddered as the first shots were fired. But instead of targeting Central Command, the cerulean ships opened fire on the outer defense platforms. Their targeting is deliberate, Atreya observed. They're trying to disable, not destroy. They want to provoke a response without causing too much damage. Which means they need both sides intact for whatever their real plan is, Liam added. Neeson studied them both for a long moment, even as more impacts rocked the station. Lieutenant Therox, can you access your father's command codes? Yes, but do it, now. Neeson gestured to a secure terminal. If you're really on our side, prove it. Atreya hesitated only briefly before moving to the terminal. Her fingers flew across the interface as she input a complex series of commands. Suddenly, new data flooded the tactical displays. These are the real cerulean fleet positions, she explained. They're defending their own borders. These ships attacking us are imposters. Confirmed, an analyst called out. Energy signatures don't match known cerulean profiles. They're using some kind of masking technology. Clever girl, Neeson murmured, then louder. All ships, hold fire. I repeat, hold fire. These are not cerulean forces. But it was too late. The attacking ships had achieved their goal. Chaos and confusion reigned as both sides scrambled to make sense of the situation. Through it all, Duke remained calm, watching the proceedings with what Liam swore was understanding in his intelligent eyes. We need to expose them, Liam said, moving to stand beside Atreya. Show both sides they're being played. Yes, but how? Neeson demanded. We're running out of time before this escalates beyond control. Atreya's eyes lit up suddenly. The crystals, the ones they're using to power their ships, they're unstable because they're synthetic. No wonder the energy signatures are wrong. If we can prove that, Liam said, catching her train of thought, we can show everyone these aren't real cerulean ships. And I know exactly how to do it, Atreya smiled, a fierce expression that made Liam's heart race. But I'll need your help, both of you. As she outlined her plan, Liam couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come from that battlefield where Duke had first found her. Sometimes the most profound changes started with the smallest acts of trust. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. The sensor officer's voice crackled with tension. It's the real cerulean fleet, and they're led by the Stellar Dawn. My father's flagship, Atreya breathed, her luminescent skin pulsing with emotion. He's coming himself. Liam watched as the massive cerulean vessels materialized like ethereal sea creatures swimming through the void. Their crystalline hulls refracted starlight in mesmerizing patterns, a stark contrast to the crude imitation ship still hammering at Central Command's defenses. Three-way standoff, Admiral Neeson mused, her weathered features illuminated by the tactical display. This could get very ugly very fast. Or it could be our chance, Liam said, stepping forward. Think about it. We have the real cerulean fleet, the imposters, and us. If we can get my father to see the truth. Atreya's voice trailed off as a new transmission cut through the chaos. This is General Therox of the Cerulean Defense Force. The voice was deep, resonant, carrying the same musical quality as Atreya's, but tempered by steel. I demand an explanation for these acts of aggression against our people. Father, wait! Atreya grabbed the comm controls before anyone could stop her. These attacks aren't what they seem. A heavy silence fell over the command center. Even Dukenus, who had been pacing restlessly, sat at attention. Atreya? General Therox's voice softened marginally. Why are you on a human station? Are you being held captive? No, I'm here by choice, she replied firmly. Because of him. She grabbed Liam's hand, pulling him closer to the comm. Because a human and his dog saved my life when they had every reason not to. Because everything we thought we knew about this war is wrong. Liam squeezed her hand, marveling at how natural it felt despite their physiological differences. General Therox, I'm Captain Liam Madison. Your daughter is telling the truth. These attacking ships aren't cerulean. They're using synthetic crystals to mimic your technology. Synthetic crystals? Therox's voice sharpened. Impossible. The harmonics would be unstable. The energy patterns would show exactly the kind of fluctuations we're detecting. Admiral Neeson interrupted, sending the sensor data to the Stellar Dawn. Someone wants this war to continue, General. They're playing both sides. As if to punctuate her words, the imposter fleet launched another barrage, this time targeting both human and cerulean ships indiscriminately. Clever bastards, Liam muttered. They're trying to trigger a three-way battle before we can expose them. Atraya's eyes suddenly lit up with an idea. Duke, she called, and the German shepherd trotted over immediately. Father, do you remember what you taught me about the crystal harmonics? About how they respond to pure intentions? Of course, but what does your human's companion animal have to do with... Everything, Atraya interrupted. Duke found me on the battlefield. He knew somehow that I wasn't the enemy. What if we could use that same pure instinct, that same ability to sense truth, but amplify it through the crystals? Liam caught on immediately. The crystals in your ships respond to biological rhythms, right? What if we could use that to expose the synthetic ones? By the first light, General Therox breathed. It could work, but we'd need a focal point, a way to channel the harmonic resonance. Me, Atria said firmly. I can do it, but I'll need help. She turned to Liam, her ocean blue eyes intense. I'll need you, both of you. Admiral Neeson stepped forward. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. Those imposters are charging their main weapons. What followed was a blur of activity. Liam found himself back aboard the Star Weaver with Atria and Duke, their small ship positioned precisely between the three fleets. Atria had stripped down to her base suit, which seemed to shimmer with its own inner light as she sat cross-legged on the deck. The crystals in my body will act as a resonator, she explained, taking Liam's hand in hers. Duke's pure empathic abilities will provide the baseline frequency, but I need your human determination. Your... what's the word you used before? Stubbornness? Liam grinned. Yes, that. She smiled back, then turned serious. This will be intimate. Are you ready? Liam nodded, trying to ignore how his pulse quickened at her words. Duke settled between them, his warm presence a grounding force. Beginning harmonic resonance, Atria announced over the comm. Father, on my mark, channel the fleet's crystal matrix through the Stellar Dawn's main array. Standing by, daughter. General Therox's voice carried a note of pride now. Admiral Neeson, Liam added, have your ships ready to target any vessels that don't respond to the harmonic pulse. Understood, Captain. Atria began to hum, a sound that seemed to vibrate at the quantum level. Duke joined in with a low howl that shouldn't have harmonized with the alien frequencies, but somehow did. Liam felt Atria's consciousness brush against his through their joined hands, cool and electric and utterly intoxicating. The space around them began to shimmer as the real cerulean ships pulsed in sync with Atria's harmonics. The imposter vessels stood out in stark contrast, their synthetic crystals creating discordant patterns in the energy field. Now, Atria commanded, her voice overlaid with harmonics that made Liam's bones vibrate. A wave of pure crystalline energy burst from their position, washing over all three fleets. The real cerulean ships sang in response, their hulls blazing with natural light. The imposters, however, began to convulse as their synthetic power sources overloaded. Target those ships, Admiral Neeson ordered. Don't let them escape. But the imposters were already fleeing, their masking technology failing to reveal vessels of unfamiliar design. Both human and cerulean weapons fire followed them into hyperspace, but the damage was done. Their deception had been exposed. In the Starweaver's cabin, Liam held Atria as she slumped against him, exhausted but triumphant. Duke nuzzled them both, his tail wagging with satisfaction. That, Liam said, brushing a strand of bright blue hair from her face, was either the craziest or most brilliant thing I've ever been part of. Why not both? Atria smiled up at him, her skin glowing with residual crystal energy. It seems to work for us. The peace negotiations were scheduled to begin the next day aboard Central Command, but tonight belonged to celebration. The station's main observation deck had been transformed into a reception hall, where humans and ceruleans mingled freely for the first time since the war began. Liam stood by the panoramic windows, watching the combined fleets drift in formation against the star-filled backdrop. Duke sat contentedly at his feet, occasionally accepting treats from passing admirers of both species. "He's become quite the celebrity," Atrea's melodic voice came from behind him. "The dog who helped end a war." Liam turned and felt his breath catch. She'd traded her battlesuit for a flowing dress that seemed to be made of living crystal, its iridescent fabric shifting colors with her movements. Her bright blue hair cascaded freely down her back, and her natural bioluminescence seemed enhanced by emotion. "You look," he searched for words adequate to describe her ethereal beauty. "So do you," she smiled, adjusting the collar of his dress uniform. The simple touch sent electricity through his skin. "Though I'm still not used to seeing you so formal." "Blame your father," Liam chuckled. "He insisted I dress appropriately for my new role as Cultural Liaison Officer." "Ah, yes, the position conveniently created to justify our continued collaboration." Her eyes sparkled with amusement. "Very clever of Admiral Neeson. Speaking of collaboration," Liam took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt now. "That harmonic resonance we shared earlier, I've never experienced anything like it." Atrea's skin flushed a deeper blue. "It's an intimate thing among my people, sharing crystal harmonics, usually reserved for..." She trailed off meaningfully. "For those who intended to bond," she finished softly. "The crystals in our bodies respond to emotional resonance. What we did today, combining your human passion with my people's harmonics, it created something entirely new." Liam stepped closer, drawn by the intensity in her ocean blue eyes. "Is that why I can still feel you, like an echo in my mind?" "Yes," she breathed. "Our energies are aligned now. It's unprecedented." Duke chose that moment to whine and nudge them both toward the door. Several nearby officers poorly concealed their knowing smiles. "I think," Liam said carefully, "we should continue this discussion somewhere more private." Atrea's luminescence pulsed with anticipation. "My quarters are closer." The walk to her temporary quarters was both endless and too short. Every brush of their hands, every shared glance, built an almost tangible tension between them. Duke trotted ahead, seemingly pleased with himself for orchestrating this moment. Once inside, Atreya activated the privacy shields, and the air itself seemed to charge with possibility. She turned to face him, her expression vulnerable yet determined. "Among my people," she said softly, "we believe that true bonds transcend physical forms, that souls can recognize each other across any distance, any difference." Liam reached out to trace the luminescent patterns on her cheek. "Is that what this is? Soul recognition? You tell me," she challenged gently. "What did your heart say when Duke led you to me on that battlefield?" "That you were meant to be found," he answered without hesitation. "That everything was about to change." Their first kiss was like touching a live wire. Electric, dangerous, addictive. The crystal harmonics in Atrea's body sang in response to his touch, creating patterns of light that danced across their skin. Their passion built like a symphony, each touch, each breath adding new notes to their shared resonance. Duke, displaying his usual perfect timing, retreated to the outer room, settling in to guard their privacy. What followed was a discovery of differences and similarities, an exploration of trust and vulnerability. Human warmth met cerulean coolness, creating something entirely new. Their bond through the crystal harmonics amplified every sensation, every emotion, until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Afterward, they lay entwined, their skins still shimmering with residual energy. Atrea traced patterns on Liam's chest, her touch leaving trails of soft light. "I never imagined," she murmured, that finding love with a human would feel so... right. "I never imagined a dog's instincts would lead me to my soulmate," Liam replied, kissing her forehead, "though I probably should have trusted Duke's judgment from the start." "He knew," Atreya agreed, "just as he knew I wasn't really your enemy. Animals have a wisdom we often overlook." "Speaking of wisdom," Liam propped himself up on an elbow. How do you think your father will react to this development in human-cerulean relations? Audrey laughed, the sound like crystal wind chimes. Actually, I think he suspected this would happen. Why else would he agree so readily to the liaison position? Sneaky, Liam grinned. Must run in the family. Says the man who kidnapped an enemy officer because his dog liked her. Best decision I ever made. Their playful banter was interrupted by a message alert. Admiral Neeson's voice filled the room. Captain Madison, Lieutenant Therox, your presence is requested at tomorrow's opening ceremony. As symbols of our people's potential for unity, you'll be seated at the main table. And they looked at each other and burst out laughing. Symbols of unity, Liam repeated. If they only knew how unified we've become. Perhaps they should, Atria said thoughtfully. Our peoples need to see that true connection is possible. That love can bridge any gap. Are you suggesting we go public with our relationship? Why not? She sat up, the sheet falling away to reveal her luminescent skin. We're already making history. Why not make it more interesting? Liam pulled her back into his arms, marveling at how perfectly she fit there. You're going to keep changing my life, aren't you? We're going to keep changing each other's lives, she corrected. And maybe, just maybe, we'll change everyone else's too. In the outer room, Duke barked in apparent agreement, making them both smile. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to bridge the gap between their peoples. But tonight was theirs alone. A moment of perfect harmony between two souls who found each other across the stars, thanks to the wisdom of a very special dog. The grand ceremonial hall of Central Command buzzed with anticipation as delegates from both species gathered for the peace treaty signing. The space had been transformed, decorated with intertwining symbols of both cultures. Crystalline formations pulsed in harmony with human technology, creating an atmosphere of unified beauty. Liam stood before a mirror in his quarters, adjusting his formal uniform one last time. Duke sat watching him, head tilted in that knowing way of his. Yeah, I'm nervous, Liam admitted to his faithful companion. This changes everything. A soft knock preceded Atria's entrance. She wore a ceremonial cerulean dress that seemed to capture starlight itself, her natural luminescence enhanced by happiness. The crystal harmonics between them hummed with recognition, drawing them together like magnetic poles. Ready to scandalize two civilizations? She asked, smoothing his collar with a touch that sent shivers down his spine. With you? Always. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Though I think your father might have something to say about it. Actually, she smiled mysteriously, he already has. Before Liam could question her meaning, Admiral Neeson's voice came over the comm. It's time. They made their way to the ceremonial hall, Duke padding proudly beside them. The crowd parted as they entered, whispers and stares following their progress. At the main table, General Therox and Admiral Neeson waited, along with other high-ranking officials from both sides. Before we begin, General Therox's voice carried across the hall, there is a matter of personal significance to address. Liam felt Atria squeeze his hand as her father continued. In our darkest hour, when war threatened to destroy everything we built together, it was not our weapons or our strategies that saved us. It was understanding, connection, love. The general's eyes met Liam's. My daughter and Captain Madison have shown us that the greatest changes often start with the smallest acts of trust. In this case, the wisdom of an Earth canine who saw beyond our differences. Duke barked softly, drawing appreciative chuckles from the crowd. Their bond, Admiral Neeson added, represents everything we hope to achieve with this peace treaty. Not just cooperation, but true unity between our peoples. Liam stepped forward, his voice clear and strong. When I found Atria on that battlefield, I had a choice to make. Trust in hatred and fear, or trust in something better. My dog showed me the way, and in doing so, changed everything. Our bond, Atria joined him, their fingers intertwined, is more than just a symbol. It's proof that love knows no boundaries, not of species, not of war, not of space itself. The crystal harmonics in her body pulsed with emotion, creating patterns of light that danced between them. The assembled crowd gasped as the energy spread, human and cerulean alike feeling the resonance of their connection. Therefore, General Therox announced, as part of this peace treaty, We are establishing the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program with Captain Madison and Lieutenant Therox as its first official representatives. And Admiral Neeson added with a slight smile, we are pleased to announce the first official human-cerulean bonding ceremony to be held after the treaty signing. The hall erupted in applause and exclamations. Liam turned to Atraya, surprised. You planned this? We planned it, she corrected, pulling him close. Our fathers agreed that nothing would cement the peace better than a formal union between our peoples. Their kiss sent ripples of crystal energy throughout the hall, the harmonics of their love creating a light show that would be remembered for generations. The treaty signing proceeded smoothly after that, but it was their bonding ceremony that truly captured hearts and minds. Traditional ceremonies from both cultures were blended seamlessly, with Duke playing a special role as the one who first brought them together. Later, in their new shared quarters aboard the station, Liam and Atraya celebrated their union in their own private way, their passion enhanced by the crystal harmonics that now bound them permanently together. Duke kept watch in the outer room, content in the knowledge that his human had found his perfect match. You know, Liam murmured afterward, tracing the luminescent patterns on Atraya's skin, I never thought I'd be grateful for a battlefield patrol. And I never thought I'd be grateful for being wounded, she laughed, the sound like music. Though I still say Duke knew exactly what he was doing. Of course he did, Liam grinned. He's always been smarter than me. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by an urgent message from Admiral Neeson. We've detected unusual energy signatures in the outer system. We need our best team to investigate. They looked at each other, excitement building. Ready for another adventure? Liam asked. With you? Always. Atraya kissed him deeply, their harmonics singing with joy. Though this time, let's try not to start any wars. Deal. He whistled for Duke, who bounded in, ready for action. Though with you two watching my back, I'm not worried about anything. As they prepared for their new mission, Liam reflected on how much had changed since that fateful day on the battlefield. One decision, guided by the pure wisdom of his loyal companion, had not only changed his life, but had helped reshape the future of two civilizations. Some called it destiny, others called it luck. But Liam knew the truth. Sometimes the greatest changes come from the simplest acts of trust and the purest forms of love.